Morning. It is. It is here anyway. I'm gonna watch this. It might be. Who knows? This could be in the future, so I might be talking to somebody in the future, which is kind of freaky, Anyway, the actual time is 9:45 on a Tuesday morning in Yorkshire, and the sun's shining in March. Can't be bad, right? I wasn't going to do one of these today, but inevitably. I'm kind of triggered by things and things that I face, things that I have found to be a problem in the past is probably where a lot of this comes from. Like trying to get the paper square on there. This is an old graphic designer type of thing. I hate. You put paper on the drawing board and it's got to be square on the drawing board. That's just an idiosyncrasy, I think. I'm failing miserably now. Look, I can't get any of it square. Right, I think that'll be about square enough. Yeah, about there. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to be using it's just straightforward cartridge, some nasty willow charcoal. This charcoal we were using this last night. I've got some cooking at the moment, so I've got a few bits that are my own stuff, but they're a bit small. And I've got some fresh bits cooking. I might actually use. I know it's a tiny piece, but it looks ridiculous, but I think I'm going to use that rather than this nasty willow because this is Winsor and Newton willow, and it's a little bit waxy. I don't know why. It's a little bit like working with a crayon. So you get lines that are crayon-like. People like that as a charcoal. This you can see on here. Look, you see it there. It has a crayon-like. So what we did last night in the lesson. So it has a crayon-like feel about it. Not my preferred. I'm much more probably it's smoothness for me. I think it's important that I get the to get the flow to be smooth. This is not a drawing lesson, by the way, for that guy that keeps commenting. This is not a drawing lesson. This is me talking about people like him. The thing is that there are three certainties in life: death, taxes, and people criticize what you do. There's that. Those are the three things. But and dealing with criticism, it's I don't know. I mean, I just read about Ridley Scott saying that you just don't read the reviews, so he just never has to deal with the fools that think that they know better, and it's kind of like that. I mean, to ignore them is probably the easiest thing. It's not it's probably not the right answer. I mean, his answer was ignore them, but initially he just didn't read the review. So that's probably the truth of it. So people are going to criticize what you do. It's just not. It's not going to. You can't get away from that. Particularly if you're doing this. The eyes aren't quite right, or you haven't got the smile right, or whatever. Ignore them. It's not. These are people. Why someone would take it on themselves to criticize anybody, and particularly if it's another artist. That's another thing as well. I'm not, for people like that, I always think, shame on you. Any artist that criticizes another artist is, and I are guilty to some extent of that kind of thing because I'm not. This is the dilemma. I'm not a. I don't suffer fools. It's a Yorkshire trait, I suppose. I don't suffer fools, and I don't really. I don't like the Kings Who Close thing. There are artists that exploit this elitist kind of thing, and those I don't like because I think they are just pulling the wool. So that's my, I suppose. I swear I'm guilty of criticizing other artists, but I'm not sure they're artists, so I don't think that counts. But they are claiming to be, and they're claiming that they're sort of above others by doing whatever, some crazy things that they might do. But I'm not thinking about sort of Hearst or Emin or anyone like that, because I quite like what they did, and I like sort of contemporary art, full stop. But this thing of people, half the time I don't think people get it. I mean, particularly with what I do, I don't think people get that, and it's like, all I'm bothered about is really doing this. I'm doing this. I just love doing it, and I that's my goal, is to liberate people in the same way. But somebody said to me the other day, they're going to continue. You're probably watching this, Charlie, and he said he's going to continue to spread the word until we can free more artists. And I said to him, I don't really. You'll see it in the comments. I've never really thought of myself as a freedom fighter. Which was quite nice, it's I have to get the outfit and everything, but the criticism thing, it's shocking. And I'm not, when I was working with students in the design industry, I was always acutely aware of proper feedback, proper help and advice. And I'm going to talk about constructive criticism, because I'm not even sure that that's a good thing, because it's, where's the line? I like help and advice, and I like help and advice from the right people. So as a result, I developed a system to help students get the right advice from the right people that they admired and respected, basically, not the wandering critics that you find in social media that sort of just meander from one platform to another just to say something hurtful or cruel, those kind of people. But this was for students to ask for advice from professionals, people had done their job for years, and the job that these students wanted to get into, but the criticism thing it's such a destructive thing, because the thing, it's a bit like, when we're talking about the expectations thing, the expectations you initially have none, because obviously you're a child and you have no perception of what the outcome might be or should be, or how it should be done. So there is no, you don't have any expectations of your own. They're attached to you as you grow, and it's not just about art either, because life attaches expectations to you and comes along and all that. But just as the expectations become ingrained within your attitude, so do the criticism, and the way the criticisms will enforce your expectations. And I don't know. There isn't really a way of universal way of saying, you gotta just do this, because it's easy to say, just ignore them and get on with it, but you can't. I mean, you see these sort of legendary stories of film stars being devastated by criticism, and that everybody hates critics. You see all that sort of stuff, and it's true. It affects us just the same. So how you, particularly in the social media world, how you get over that, I have no formula for that. I only know that it will happen, and you just gotta sort of ride the storm if it's bad. However you let it impact on you. If it's bad, then you just got to work through it. But it will happen. I think that's the message, really. It's inevitable that people will do it to you. They're not nice people. They're just for some reason, there's kind of, what I find with this is that because I'm a bit challenging, that what I do is a little bit challenging of certain things, people will, because they've spent a long time doing what the things that I say you shouldn't do, they will be precious of that. And I understand that, it's fine. But this idea that there is only one way to do things is a non-creative approach to anything. The creative people just think there's a million ways to do something, and they're prepared to find the 1,000,001th way to do it. It's just, that's how creative people should be. It's just, there's always a way, kind of thing. And for those that are just precious about the one way that they've spent decades learning, it's difficult for them to sort of be told that maybe there's a different way, maybe there's another way you could do it. I don't know. So that's a closed mind kind of thing. These people that have very limited thinking, which is ingrained within tradition and practice and all the rest of it. But it's difficult for them, so they're going to come at you. I think most of the time you're going to get good comments, nice comments. Sometimes nice comments don't really help, but it doesn't matter. You'd rather have those than the bad comments. The good comments, you can, it depends. If it comes from somebody that you admire, then that's a win. If it comes from somebody that's just maybe not a creative. In fact, I did a score to, I developed, because my background is programming, so I developed this score system where you could measure the value of the criticism that you were getting, and it asked you things like, was it a friend, is it a fellow artist, is it a member of the family, all that kind of thing, and then gave you a score. And if you get a high score, then it was valuable, but then take it with a pinch of salt, because all comments and criticisms are all going to be not yours, because yours is the most important opinion. But I did that simply because I felt the students were just getting carried away with people's opinions, and to sort of light-heartedly dissect it. It wasn't meant to be a serious thing, but it made people think, and then obviously if they think about it, maybe they'll get a better perspective on things. But that's all it was for. So, but as I say, that was because I felt that students were getting a bit sort of maybe a little bit damaged by people nonsense, basically. Criticism that really has no value, no bearing on what they do. It goes back to this thing of, you're the person that decides, but you can't let other people's criticism influence your decision. It's a thing. It's the dilemma is that are you experienced, or are you is your mindset right that you could have a valuable self opinion? Is it such that you could say, yeah, it's right and wrong because of this? Because there are some guys, some painters that have an amazing technical skill, and they can look at something in terms of this, that, and the other, and look at it in terms of the achievement, if you like, the application, execution, whatever you want to call it. They can look at it in terms of that and assess its value based on that. But all of that is a little bit automotive or automated, because it's not, the real opinion is going to be based on how you feel about something, or whether or not you technically produce something well. That's the thing. So you've got to, I suppose, in a way, you've got to embrace the idea that this is an emotional process. It's based on your emotional responses. It's that really is at the root of what you're doing. It is an emotional response, and if you're, especially with portraits, it is your response to another human. That's what it is fundamentally. But there is a tendency to make it about the technical execution all the time. the right and wrong ways to do it, the right and wrong outcomes, all that kind of thing. There is a tendency for everybody, particularly if you're starting out with this, to be about the doing of it, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. It's always about the doing for some people, and it is a problem with that, because that then opens you up to criticism, because you're doing it in relation to a given outcome or a given method of execution. So it's always going to be criticized on those grounds, even if it's not somebody else. It'll be you that criticizes it on those grounds, that I didn't do it because of this, I didn't follow these particular rules. So that's it's a complicated thing. I mean, I'm probably guilty of just ignoring everything, and that has been my sort of way of dealing with anybody who criticizes things. There isn't anybody that I care about that much, that or respect enough for their criticism to be valid. I think that I'm old enough and daft enough now to know what is good and what is bad. So I mean, that is and that's just age and experience, I think, that does that. But the fact of it is, the fact of the matter is, I think that is what I'm trying to say is, somebody will always criticize what you do. So it's a fact that you can't get around. So you might as well just, deal with it however you want to deal with it, but don't let it get to you, because that's the other thing, is that it can't. If it gets to you, then there is you've probably got a mindset issue problem. That's the reason it gets to you, because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You might have like somebody commented the other day about everything I do turns out ugly, or something like, I can't remember what they said, but something like that. It turns out ugly because of your expectations. Because what define ugly? This is the thing. When you compare something to somebody else's, then maybe that's ugly. If you genuinely do this with your heart, it can never be ugly. It can not necessarily look like the person that you're trying to draw, but if it's done from the heart, it will never be ugly. It's one of those things. It's not it's one of those things where you've got to get away from the practical execution thing, and you see, it's hard. I'm always saying this about it's hard with portraits, because fundamentally, and people, I can talk about like the dot thing the other day, that it's been on a while now, the dot, how to use the dots, and yet people still talk about the image that I show, missing the point completely about what the video is about. So there are always going to be people that just don't get it, and they'll criticize it for whatever grounds. You can't get around that. You can't get away from that. But it's not. You shouldn't let it destroy you. I think that, as I said, that it will happen. You will get people that criticize what you do. Don't let them get to you. But the other part of it is, try not to take on board what they say to a point where you're delivering or self-medicating the criticism, because that's when they've got to you. That's when they've won, and that's the problem. These people are not your friends. These people are not sympathetic to what you're doing. They're just people that, for some reason, feel the need to tell you that you're wrong and you're not doing it right, as many people tell me. So, but there is from my point of view, there is a little bit of, as you can tell, there is a little bit of anger and resentment towards these people. I can't help it, because of, I had it all my life, and to a point where I did it to myself, really, most of the time. But I just don't want my cause, my aim, my goal is for other people to be liberated like me. And I feel that these, for want of a better word, clowns that would think that it's clever to criticize people, and it doesn't do any harm. I feel like I've got to tell people it does do harm, and don't don't let them get to you. Accept that they're going to be there, but don't let them get to you. You've got to really, because you're better than them. You're better than them because you're doing something that maybe is questioning the how things should be done. Maybe it's exciting and different, and all those sort of things. I mean, the end of the day, if you're a die-hard copyist, it's got to look like an exact copy of a photograph or an exact copy of a photographic image. It's going to be difficult. I mean, I said this in one of those videos, and what to think about before you started drawing. If you're that way inclined, you're always going to be open for a criticism, because ultimately, if you want to decide on whether or not a photo replica image is good enough, then it can only be done by, and the decision can be made based on comparison. So right there is going to sort of be at the root of any kind of self-doubt or artist block or anything like that. All that is rooted is firstly in the wrong expectations, but secondly in the comparisons, and that unfortunately that is the way it's going to be. So you got to get used to that. If on the other hand it's more about self-expression, then that in itself immediately tells you that it is your self-expression, and only you really judge as to whether or not you've expressed yourself eloquently enough. That's probably my thing. I always think that portraits are responsive, and it's about my expression and all the rest of it. Then I'm kind of in that boat. I'm not really trying to make photo replicas of anything, whether it's a charcoal or a painting or whatever, like the one we did at the weekend. So I wouldn't say I'm impervious to criticism, but it annoys me that somebody would think themselves sufficiently in a position where they could make a comment that it was valid. That's not, I just say it just annoys me that people do that, but it annoys me mostly because there's probably going to be people out there now that are trying to make portraits and just being told they're not good enough, and that's not nice. I'd go into battle for those kind of people, people that are not being allowed to self-express themselves and just enjoy this. I think that it's kind of, for me, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing it for them, those kind of people. I'm trying. I mean, the dots and the rest of it that I do are just simply my quick routes to get into a point where the drawing doesn't matter. That's why it's 3 dots. It's 3 dots because it's how simple can I make it is what I thought when I was talking about this to the student. How simple can I make it for someone just to get to a point where they can start to make marks that they are happy with? This is the thing. It's just a shortcut to that, really. It's not a shortcut to like the methods and all the rest of it, and the geometry is all about formulaic conclusions. I don't really want that. I wouldn't want that for anybody. I'm not really advocating that it should be joining the dots kind of thing, or even painting by numbers. I'm not really interested in that. I think there still has to be that element of inaccuracy and that element of wrongness about anything. I think those are the sweet spots, as some people like to refer to them, when it's like not meant to be there, but it looks good because it's there, that kind of stuff. But that, as I said, the dots is that. It's just an answer to the solution, a simple answer to a way of getting things in the right place. And its ultimate goal is to improve observational skills. That's all it is. Because once you've got those, then you can pick about the dots. Everything else will just, your observation is developed, and you can use that. It's not about trying to find dots anymore. But initially it is. But as I said, that's nothing to do with the not getting criticism or managing criticism. No, I mean all that is your mindset. I think when I started doing these in 2019, it really was a case of I'm doing this and I don't care what you think. It was that, because that was, coming back after the 30 years, that was my last impression. That was my last thought, that it wasn't good enough, and because people weren't buying it, what I was doing, I couldn't make a living at it, and therefore I'm not good enough, and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't good enough to make a living. That was, so I came back to it with this residue of people not liking what I do, and it not being good enough. So my immediate way back in was to say, I'm doing this, I don't care what you think. And I did. That's what I did, and I did that. And I still do that, really. So, but that's where it started. That's where it stemmed from, and that was the trigger. So I'd say I'm probably saying with the criticism thing is that just do it and don't care what people think, and just see what happens. If you care what people think, then you're always going to, there's it's going to affect the way you do it, the way what subjects you choose. There's all those sort of things that are going to be affected by the caring what people think, and that's a big thing. I mean, I've just seen one of these Studio Insight things with an illustrator, painter, and he said he wanted people to like what he did. That's a difficult thing. I mean, I can understand that from an illustrator, because that's exactly what an illustrator wants, because the client won't pay if he doesn't like it. But from a painter's point of view, because now he's a painter, it's not necessarily a good thing to have, because it's always going to be in the back of your mind when you're choosing subjects, when you're choosing colours, when you're choosing what size to work at. Will somebody like this? Galleries, my only experience in galleries was when back in the day when I went sort of touring around, and I got ripped apart by galleries. But the general consensus was, do it this size, do these subjects, use these colours. That was kind of my experience, and I don't think all galleries are like that. But these were the Mickey Mouse galleries that I, sort of visited, that had this strange. Well, the clientele were probably people that wanted to match paintings to the curtains, that kind of stuff. So I as I said, my experience was probably limited, and not true of all galleries. But as I say, once it gets to a point where you care what people want and whether they like it or not, then you're open to criticism straight away, because if somebody don't like it, they'll and you're bothered whether they like it or not, then you're gonna suffer, aren't you? But I'm for this sake of what I do, which is just doing it and not really thinking about selling, or because I don't sell anything, I don't exhibit, and I don't enter competition. So this is just for my benefit, for my pleasure. So I'm lucky in that way. I think that there are people that have to, maybe want to, exhibit and compete, but I don't. I mean, I'm in the lessons we talk about the harm of competition and all that kind of thing. But in terms of whether people like it or not, I'm not really, concerned as to whether they do or not. Like I say, my only goal is that people will do this and enjoy doing it, and not be held back by people that really don't appreciate what's going off here, because that's the thing. A lot of people think they're artists. The people that criticize are often other artists, and they're not really artists. As I said earlier, you don't really get real artists criticizing other artists. it's a different thing when you're in conversation. And sometimes I talk to other artists. We don't very rarely talk about each other's work. It's a strange thing. It's not a working with other artists or being with other artists. The learning doesn't necessarily happen in relation to how did you get that color? How did you get the light on? You don't get that kind of learning from other artists. You get it's another level of learning when you're working with other artists. I'd just like to say though, this is natural hazelwood charcoal. Now, I think it's because it's a dense wood. This is willow. I mean, it's still got some indications that it had, it's a stick that's been cut because it's got a gnarl there where there was a twig from it. And so obviously I'm assuming there's no chemicals involved, or I can imagine somebody said something about they put something in when it's been burnt to ensure that it does what it does. But that's shop bought Winsor & Newton charcoal, and it's not in the same league as this, and mainly because of the lightness. The lightness of the application. When this applies, I'm not going to use this on here because it'll just ruin it. But the lightness of the charcoal itself, as it makes the marks, is the difference. It's kind of, in a way, it's a bit grayer. It will make very definite marks if I apply more pressure, but it's in a way a lot lighter than. Because it's got this more grayer feel about it. But I think the overall difference is this wax-like quality of the willow, as opposed to the smoothness of the hazel. Now, I've tried vine, and the trouble with vine is that it's just a little bit too soft for me, and grainy. Makes a lot of mess, and a lot of and the marks are a little bit too, as I said, a little bit too grainy for me. But and plus the fact that paper makes a big impact with vine. It's it can be like drawing on some sandpaper sometimes. In fact, somebody said that they used charcoal on pastel mat, and I think that's like sandpaper, and that would make a lot of mess. So I'm not really paper wise. My only concern with paper is how cheap can it be. So all these things like pastel mat are just out of my price bracket. So I'm not really au fait with those sort of things. So I mean, sometimes I'll buy pads, the Winsor & Newton pads, charcoal, all those things that are recommended, and just fight with them for a few weeks until I've used all the paper. But I'll quickly switch back to this very cheap, simple cartridge that's just a recycled cartridge. I'll go back to that, as soon as I can get some. The downside to it is that it is probably sold as craft paper, so it has when they dispatch it, it's not dispatched with any care. So it'll come with half the pack damaged, and that's just the price I have to pay. I mean, it's cheap enough to absorb that kind of thing. But yeah, so as I said, I was just just showing that this particular charcoal is for me a superior in that it does the things I want it to do, and I think that's probably what. And I've got used to using it. When I started making charcoal, I made it with hawthorn, and if you're a graphite artist using charcoal, moving to charcoal, then I suggest that's what you try and get and try and make, because it's like graphite. It's like graphite, but with the facility to make very dark marks. So you get best of both worlds, basically. So you get a drawing kind of feel about it. And sometimes the early ones, people just say, what kind of graphite did you use? And because it looks so much like graphite. But as I said, now I'm into. Now, I mean, it was an accident that I found hazel, because I thought it was silver birch, and I was pulling it up out of the ground, and these straight sticks, not knowing, I just thought it was silver birch because they were all around the silver birch trees. It just happened to be, located in the wood where I walk. And but I quickly found out that it wasn't. It was because I found the hazel trees or bushes as they're more likely to look like bushes, and I realised that it was hazel that I'd been using, and since then that's what I use. For me, if it's a technical thing that you're concerned with, or that I'm kind of talking about, it's because for me the tool has to allow you to do it. That's the thing. It doesn't have to get in the way. If it gets in the way, i.e. that, and you don't know. The thing is, if you're learning to draw with charcoal and you're drawing one of these you wouldn't know that it's too waxy, for instance, because you've never experienced anything else. So, but that's the thing. I always say to people, just buy a load of charcoal and just try different things, and a load of paper, and just try different things and see what suits. Just going out to the art store and buying the first thing you can find that's the one that says made for charcoal, paper for charcoal and other, all other drawing mediums. Don't do that, because it might not suit you. It might not be right. I'd say start with cheap sketchbooks that you can find in local thrift stores or whatever. I mean, I acquired a couple of canvases, 3 canvases, and a watercolor pad from a local charity shop, so a thrift store. So you can find them anywhere, and just try that. I mean, famously, people draw on newsprint, don't they? I mean, people even draw on newspaper, paper that's been newsprint that's been printed on. But find something that suits you and make, because if it gets in the way, because you can't get the densities or you can't get the subtleties of the tones, if it gets in the way, you're just not going to learn. So and you're going to be disillusioned by it all. So don't sort of get into that. It really is not a big deal to find the right tools. It's just a case of experimenting with it. But yeah, going back to the criticism thing, I think generally it is going to happen. Generally it's going to happen. You can't get away from it. But just think that, and even constructive criticism is not good. People that want to help will help regardless of a response to what you've done, if you know what I mean. So seek those people out. There are people that, when I talk about what I do all day long, because I love what I do, and that's generally what happens. People who love what they do are quite happy to share. So seek those people out. Don't sort of allow it to be initiated by the work that you do. Sort of presenting people with something and asking their opinion on it isn't necessarily a good thing. It can be, but it's not necessarily a good thing. You don't really need to do that. As I said, people that love what they do will gladly share what they do or what they know. It's just one of those things. People who there are people who are precious. You get them all the time. I've said many times before. When I lectured at Demont University, there was a couple of lectures there that would only give so much of their knowledge to the students. I think I don't understand stuff like that, but that's how some people's minds work. But as I said, seek out people that love what they do and just ask them. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many people will gladly help, because they'd feel honoured. I mean, when people ask me, I'm kind of honoured that they ask me. I just think that it's of course. I mean, I'm telling stuff in these videos anyway, so it's the same thing. And I'm not, people say to me, you give too much away and all that. I don't think I do. I don't mind either. Nobody gave anything to me. I wasn't. I remember meeting the ones that were precious about what they do. Not necessarily in the drawing world, because I've never really connected with artists that make portraits or draw as such. I do now, but my general opinion of those people is that many of them don't want to talk to me. it's probably I've got a it's probably my personality, but it's the again this preciousness thing. People think that it's oh no, don't talk to me, especially when it's club type stuff. I mean, I sometimes talk to people that are members of the elite club, and they look at me like I'm some kind of something on their show, you know. So I just, and when that happens, I always think, well, you know, I know exactly what kind of artist they are. But as I said, criticism will come at you. It's a natural part of what we do. Like I said, you know, death, taxes, and criticism are the three constants in life. And if you're an artist, and you just gotta deal with it, accept it for what it is, and deal with it. But don't let it infect you. Don't let it get to you. It can't do that bit. And even worse, don't let it become something that you replicate when you're making work. You know, because somebody said something once about what you do, and it was this, that, and the other. Don't continue to apply that narrow thinking to what you do. It can't. You know, we can. People can hurt us, but we can't hurt ourselves. That's not a good thing. So you must never do that. Anyway, I'm going to carry on with this fella, and it's funny. I was looking at, you know, I very rarely look at other artists' work, but the only kind of people I look at are probably Sargent, Zorn, and Soroya, and then I've been looking more recently. Oh, I saw some great painter I saw recently. I don't tend not to think of like names as such, but I was looking at Soroya's work, and somebody was talking about how they worked, and it was remarkable. And then seeing the comment that somebody said about, you know, I think it was Van Gogh. He made thousands of paintings, but only 100 are considered masterpieces. That kind of thing. And I was looking at Soroya. I mean, Soroya's work is just off the scale. It's just, you know, it's just in terms of the work. In terms of, they say, the draftsmanship, many critics would say he wasn't a good draftsman. You can talk about him being a good draftsman, but you can sort of look at some of his faces and think, yeah, and some of his portraits, you can think, oh, yeah, well, you know. But I love them. I love the fact that they aren't technically perfect, because I like that. I've done a video somewhere where I talked about the wrongness thing. I really like the wrongness, especially when we're bombarded with the rightness at the moment, you know, and there's a move towards photorealism, even within sort of the painting fraternity. There is an element of photorealism in there, you know, and they're losing the soul because of it. And they can be really good. I mean, some of them is, you know, tonally is, because that's the challenge. They get the tone. If you want to be photorealistic, generally it's focus on the tones. But they're just amazing. And I'm kind of, I'm not against that kind of thing, but I do prefer it to be drawn and to look like it's drawn and to feel like it's drawn. And I want to see the inconsistencies and the slight kind of errors in things. I want to see all that. I think those are the bits that connect really to the artist, the errors. But I don't mean errors in sort of primal kind of primitive terms. I mean errors that are part of the artist's process, their investigation, or their feeling around. Because one of the things that you'll see me doing on this, one of the things I like about drawing, painting, whatever, is the meandering exploration thing, because that is like, it's like feeling around. I've said this before about drawing portraits. If you imagine, and I mean no disrespect, if you're blind and you'd feel around somebody's face, you wouldn't just go round the nose, would you? You wouldn't keep going round the nose like that. You imagine that. You imagine like a scene from Marx Brothers, twisting the nose and trying to find out where the nose is and the light and all that. You wouldn't do that. You watch somebody who was blind feeling around the face. They feel around the face, and I kind of like that as an analogy for what I do. I'm feeling around the face, and I'm feeling, and it starts to metamorphosize in front of your eyes. You know, from a scribbly charcoal, a bunch of charcoal marks to this this form that is a face, is a personality, and that I like that. I like that. I think it's probably at the crux. You know, forget about getting things in the right place with dots and all that sort of, but at the root of all this is this evolutionary manifestation of what I perceive to, you know, be in front of me, both emotionally and physically. So, as I said, that's kind of my thing, and that, you know, what people might consider to be a scribble is exactly really the opposite. It's just an investigation, and I gradually work, and I picked that up from, I suppose, it's part of me, it's partly my approach. I can't use the word style because I don't really think style is something that happens when you're busy doing something else. It's to borrow John Lennon's comment about life happens when you're busy doing. Well, I think style happens when you're busy doing something else. I think it's one of those. But this is the, you know, the conclusion of my approach, and you can call it style if you want, but I don't think it is. If I had a different approach, I suppose I'd have a different conclusion, and again, that would be another style. But it's not something you go looking for. Styles are not something you look for. They find you. It's not the other way around, you know. And then there's a lot of people, I want to draw in that style. It may not be that is the right thing for you. That's the problem. And people will be inspired by styles. I want to draw like that, for instance, people will say. And a good and a bad thing. I think being inspired by somebody's work is a great thing. Being inspired to make work like them is a bad thing. So there's like it's a two-way street thing. You know, it's you know, be careful, because if you're inspired to do it like somebody else, then you know, you're ignoring what you could have been done. You could do. You could be great, but you're holding yourself back by trying to be like somebody else who was equally great in their own right, but it's not you. And that's the problem. These are all, you know, in a way connected to the criticism then, because when you're trying to find what it is that you like, that makes you do what you do, then other people will say that isn't right because it doesn't fit the criteria, the normal way of doing things. You'll always get those people, and if you don't get those people, then you're not doing it right, because you want those sort of people, because you know then that you're actually making a difference. You're actually doing something that isn't like what anybody else has been doing, and that means that's a good thing. That means that your creativity, your unique creativity, is being manifest as it should be. Anyway, I'm going to finish this off, and I'll stick on the socials and things. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about criticism. I'm really pleased. Just it's going to happen. Just don't let it hurt you. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it stop you. And don't take it on board and start doing it to yourself, because that's the worst outcome. Right. As I say, I'm going to finish this fella. I quite like this fella because he's like he looks like he's just coming from the cold, and he's got that. He's looking at me. Just go on then, draw me. He's daring me to draw him. I might put something on the background. Don't quite know yet. I'm just thinking about that. The wispy hair at the top. I might just live with that. I'm not too worried about it. It's one of those things, isn't it? I just shone the side of his ear and just maybe increase a little bit of the density, but a bit more into the eyes probably. But yeah. I'm going to leave it at that for now. All right, I love you, leave you, and hopefully I've been able to Oh, I've just knocked the microphone. If that was a big bump, I'm sorry. Hopefully I've got across what I'm trying to say in my usual rambling kind of way.